His fourth Grand Prix victory in a row. Kimi Antonelli wins the Canadian Grand Prix.
Not the way I wanted to win, but yeah, we'll take it.
Even Antonelli, in his wildest dreams, wouldn't have predicted anything like this.
You've got heartbreak for George, and you feel that emotion. He knows that the title is slipping away as things stand.
I thought we were heading to a collision, like the old Merc days.
You could tell the body language has shifted, hasn't it? From happy days, really great, Kimi's alongside me in 1 and 2, or vice versa, good points for the team. Feels different this weekend.
Feels like the first Flashpoint.
I think this was Lewis's best weekend in a Ferrari Formula 1 car.
It was like roll back the years, Lewis.
He looked capable of finding the magic again.
Were we all thinking the same thing when we saw Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri on intermediate tyres? I was thinking, are we in Qatar?
That's one of the most bizarre calls I've seen, and I was genuinely like, what on earth is going on?
Welcome everyone to Montreal for F1 Nation's review of a stunning Canadian Grand Prix. I'm Tom Clarkson, and with me a former F1 driver, Jolyon and commentator Alex Jacques, the voices of F1 on F1 TV, Apple TV and Netflix during the Montreal weekend. Guys, what a race! I loved that one. What was the biggest headline for each of you guys?
It's George Russell breaking down, isn't it? It's the moment the championship swings right towards Kimi. An amazing fight, and then just heartbreak for George halfway through the race. Ended the contest as a battle. You knew Kimi was going to win, and you just think 5 races in, suddenly the momentum has shifted so much towards Kimi. It's been an amazing turnaround. He's frighteningly quick. He's doing a great job, and this was kind of on George's turf.
It was like a great film that could have been an all-time classic. I feel we got 30 laps of brilliant battling. Very rarely do you feel happy and exhausted on lap 30, but like we were looking at each other going like, how do we keep covering this? Because there were points where we just, jump cut to turn 10, Russell's wide again. They were pushing each other. Felt like the sort of race that you'd get later in the year where they were pushing each other to extreme heights, and you knew you were going to get something defining for the championship. It's round 5. That never happens in round 5.
It was like double disappointment, wasn't it? Because you've got the heartbreak for George, and you feel that emotion. You could see it. I mean, it was so much. He knows that the title it's slipping away as things stand. There's obviously a huge amount of time left and loads of races for him to gather it back, but the shift was already there, and then that. But then you're also thinking the race was so good until that point. I wanted just to see more. A breather might have been all right because there was a lot. But
JP, on that topic, we'll get on to what actually happened, but who do you think would have won that Grand Prix had George not had that technical problem?
I think George probably had the edge still. I mean, he literally had the lead, and that was quite important. He was making errors at the hairpin, and then it felt as soon as when Kimi got ahead, I thought Kimi can go now. But then he made the error at the hairpin, gave it back to George, and he wasn't easy to pass. So difficult to call it. Could have gone either way, but maybe George in front. There was also strategy that would have played out. And being the lead driver at that point, you're coming towards the pit stop phase, it probably would have paid out well for him.
I thought Kimi was the faster driver, actually, or had the faster car. Would you agree, JC?
He was all over the back of him, wasn't he? He had a good amount of core pace. It's George Russell who took the pole positions. It's George Russell who was able to overtake Antonelli and hold the lead more than Antonelli was. To be honest, I thought they were heading for a skirmish, a proper skirmish. If we'd gone the whole distance, there's no way you can keep doing that lap after lap after lap, pass and repass. I thought we were heading to a collision. Like the old Merc days. We
were building it up in commentary, weren't we? Because genuinely, you're like 30 something laps into it, and you're like, this is a lot going on for us in the booth. Let alone when you're thinking there's a race win on the line, a title on the line, doing it lap after lap. They were making lots of little mistakes, giving each other opportunities, but you are just thinking, Kimi nearly rear-ended George already. The mental strain on those guys to do it for an hour and a half is intense. I don't think we've seen a Grand Prix ever where we've had that level of back and forth for that amount of time with mistakes. You've got wheel-to-wheel battles. You've got everything else on the line. It's not just a freebie. This is a championship-defining moment. And the mental stress is intense. So I think if we were thinking a breather would be all right, imagine Kimi when he sees George slow down, you think, okay, I've probably won the race, and my word, maybe my heart rate can settle as well.
But when you look at the pace of the two guys all weekend, let's bear in mind that, Kimi had the upper hand in Miami and George held his hand up and said, this isn't a good track for me. Just you wait until we go to Montreal. I've been on pole there for the last 2 years. It's my kind of racetrack. 68 1,000th of a second separated them in qualifying, which makes me think that actually George, although he was on pole, would have been disappointed because he knows that on his track, Kimi Antonelli was his equal. So what does this mean going forward?
This is a stronghold, isn't it? And George Russell has been superb around here when he didn't have a championship-capable car. It's a different exam question, though, this year for George. It's not turn up and win 2 Grand Prix a season. It's win every single time you come to the circuit. The fact that he was country mile behind in Miami and then comes here and he was a car's width away from Kimi Antonelli all weekend clearly shows that Antonelli's in a more comfortable place at this stage. There's a long season to go, but Antonelli has got the advantage over his teammate at the moment. Even Antonelli, in his wildest dreams, wouldn't have predicted anything like this. 4 in a row to open your winning account in Formula One. He just has the measure of these regulations at the moment.
The interesting thing to me is, to your point, the way that George was almost playing the Miami weekend like an away fixture. It was almost like, yeah, but Kimi's always good here. It's his turf. He was great here last year. The gap was a few tenths. It was reasonable all weekend. It was like they were in different cars. And you thought, okay, he's kind of given up a little bit on Miami, bringing out the excuses on Friday already. It's a low grip track. Wait till we get to Montreal. So it was like he is pinning a lot on being quick here. And he was quick, but it was way closer than it was in Miami. So if you go to a Kimi stronghold, let's say, and he blitzes George by 3 or 4 tenths, you can't then come to a George stronghold and it's 50-50 like it was. So I think that's a big thing. On top of the retirement, it's the way that this is a track where George, now 3 poles in a row, but we are still debating as to who would have won the race. And this is, on paper, one of his best tracks. So it speaks volumes as to how good Kimi is right now.
I will say, hindsight is always 20/20, and I did think maybe Russell did not have his foot fully on the pedal at the end of last year, because Kimi beat him 3 times in the final 5 races. But coming into this year, and now after 4 Grand Prix wins in a row, Kimi's racing Max Verstappen up the road from George Russell in Brazil. Russell's won in Brazil in the past. George Russell's won in Vegas in the past. Kimi's stint in Vegas was sensational to come through. His overall race pace was unbelievable. There were signs that he'd made a breakthrough even before we got to this regulation set.
It's a really good point about him. And going forward, are we going to see any tightening up? Because I feel the innocence of youth, you don't know what you don't know, and you're just enjoying the moment. You think you're going to get plenty of opportunities. I feel Kimi's in that space, so I don't think he's going to tighten up. Whereas George, 8th season of Formula One, hasn't had a proper opportunity, knows they don't come along every time. Are we now in the territory psychologically where this is going to start playing on their minds? The innocence of one and the weight of the world on the other?
I think you can see it, can't you? You can see, I don't know, George tightening up. You can feel the importance for him to win and the way that he was having to defend aggressively in the sprint. You could certainly see the carefree nature of Kimi. He was treating the grass like it was a perfectly decent bit of off-roading. Like any of those moments, you could be careering into the barrier, but he had no care in the world about throwing it around the outside of turn 1, launching up the inside of turn 8, a few trips wide at the final chicane. And you just think, with a few more years, you might not be throwing your car into the same places. But the youthful exuberance is what's making him, I think, super quick, super aggressive, and he's getting away with it, isn't he, at the moment? So you can see both playing out. And whilst he's on this winning run, there's nothing to stop the youthful exuberance. So you build up more points lead, 43 points, and you're thinking, I've got a little bit of a buffer now, so I can go for these audacious moves. I can throw a car in. And the pressure is nowhere near him. I mean, he is carefree right now, whereas George is understandable if he was to tense up, because this was George Russell's championship year. This was, from last year, everyone was saying the Mercedes is going to be the car to beat, so it's George. naturally, because he was doing the job on Kimi. Your point is very good. At the end of the year, Kimi turned it round and started to look low-key, like he could challenge George, but you still thought George was walking through with the air of confidence, took pole, won in Melbourne, and we're thinking, okay, it's a George championship. Fast forward a few races, and it's not looking that way at all, and the pressure then on him is intense.
And do you think we're going to see Mercedes step in and stopping them race, or do you think they'll let him go?
Good luck if you do try and step in, because I think one of the things that was impressive from Antonelli, learning from the sprint to the Grand Prix today, is I feel that there was one point where he had to take evasive action into the final chicane, but I didn't feel like he placed his car in a position where he could have been batted off in the way that he did in the sprint. I felt he learned from the wheel-to-wheel battle with Russell in the sprint. So Mercedes have clearly reminded them of the number one rule between teammates: don't touch each other. It's inevitable if it's an inter-team battle. Evidence is the entire history of the Formula One World Championship. So they can say what they like, but ultimately, when it's sport's biggest prize is on the line, they're going to clash at some point.
The job's never been harder, has it? Because of the regs. So you're getting these sort of yo-yo races still. You see that the guys are struggling to break 1 second, which means you've got 30 laps of back and forth racing. That's a hell of a lot of chances to come together. When Nico and Lewis would have it, they might have one moment in a Grand Prix and it would be like all on this, you've got to make it through or not. And sometimes they clashed. So even more so with Lewis and Max in 21, obviously different teams. But there were flashpoints in a race where you think this is your chance. You might wait 50 laps for another opportunity. Whereas in a way they've got a chance to back out of moves and go again with the way the regs are. But naturally they're going to find themselves in position to shunt so much more often. And we've already seen that. The amount of wheel-to-wheel back and forth they've had just this weekend alone is more than we saw in the entire season of Oscar and Lando last year.
Can I take you to lap 6 of the sprint on Saturday? George said, you don't go round the outside of someone at turn 1. Kimi tried it, and of course, do you think Kimi was right to be so upset?
If you put a 19-year-old in a Formula One car that can win races, I think you're going to get radio messages like that. I thought that was I think the reality, by the time he got to Palma and the interviews afterwards, he'd remembered his media training. But the reality, it came out on the radio, didn't it? I'll let the driver judge whether it was correct or not, but he didn't do it again for the Grand Prix, did he?
JP, was there anything off camera in that post-sprint press conference you did in the pit lane, interview you did in the pit lane? Was there anything off camera, chats between them, or?
It was terse. It was really... Kimi got out the car. There was not a hint of a smile. There was just still a frustration there. They are really well media trained. I think Toto banging on the radio saying, wind it back. We need to keep it in-house. It obviously worked. In the end, it's a sprint, and it cost him a point to Lando. I mean, arguably a couple if he had got past George. But no, you could just see what it meant to him to have had that, what he feels was a wrongdoing by being shuffled out wide. I have to say it was an incredibly ambitious move he was going for. He made a good fist of it to get as far up the outside as he did at the apex, and it's natural, I think, for George to shove him wide. I think that is sort of racer's instinct there. But I can also understand why Kimi's on the radio. I think if I was in that position, I think you're going to naturally get on the radio because it's your teammate, it's a guy in-house, and you've just got to point to your team and think, he's just forced me off. I probably would do the same. It's just, I think, a natural instinct. But when Toto's then coming on the radio and telling you to shut up, you accept nothing's going to happen of it, and you get your head down, and that's basically what happened. But internally, no doubt, there's still disagreements. What did you think when they came to you then?
They didn't look at each other.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
They came in separately, off camera, in the press conference. There was no banter at all. One thing that was interesting is that at the end of the press conference, they all get up to leave together, and Kimi absolutely did not want to walk out with George. So
he started yakking to you, didn't he?
He did start yakking to me about the marathon of all things, because I'm the only one who's ever run a marathon ever, and that's all I ever talk about these days.
You told him to ask.
Yeah.
Now there's his opportunity.
Wearing a T-shirt that said, ask me about the London Marathon.
But it was interesting that he just came over to chat to me because he just did not want to walk out with George. So there was, tensions were high. Yeah.
You could tell the body language has shifted, hasn't it? From happy days, really great, Kimi's alongside me in 1 and 2, or vice versa, good points for the team. Feels different this weekend.
Yeah, and this is gonna play on, isn't it? We got this all season.
So we were talking teammate rivalries in that podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we were saying in all of them you get a flashpoint. Feels like the flashpoint.
Feels like the first Flashpoint. Last year, there were quite a few people watching who felt that it was almost antiseptic with the way that, it was overmanaged with something levelled at McLaren all the time. And the Flashpoint, a couple of metres from where we're talking now, by the pit wall, Lando immediately looked like, that's on me. No need for an argument, no need for any debate. Shut it down immediately. That did not happen. That will not happen between George and Kimi.
And that's good for us.
We love the drama, TC.
This episode is sponsored by Indeed. You just realised your business needed to hire someone yesterday. So how do you find the right candidate fast? Easy. You use Indeed. Instead of your job post getting buried in a sea of listings, Indeed's sponsored jobs helps you stand out and hire faster. Your listing jumps to the top of search results so the right candidates see it first. And it really works. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed get 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, there's no monthly subscription, no long-term contract. You only pay for results. One of the things I love about Indeed is how quick and efficient it is. Hiring can feel overwhelming, but with sponsored jobs, the process moves faster and you attract stronger candidates. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a £100 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/F1Nation. Just go to Indeed.com/F1Nation right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/F1Nation. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Look, let's talk about Ferrari now, because no one told Lewis Hamilton that you can't go round the outside of someone at turn 1, did they? Round the outside of Max Verstappen, no less. I mean, I think this was Lewis's best weekend in a Ferrari Formula 1 car. Would you guys agree?
100%. He was so happy, confident. It was like roll back the years Lewis. Even just the way that the car was moving around, but he was at one with it the whole way through. It was great to see. It's been the best Lewis for years. Even in his final year with Mercedes, it felt like he was sometimes chasing it. He knew he was leaving the team and everything. But it was a proper rollback Lewis.
He's come to 2 tracks where he's had enormous success in the past, in Shanghai and now in Montreal, and he looks like the Lewis that used to win here. And it's not so much where he finished. It's the body language of the car. It's the fact that he looked animated again. He looked like he was on the edge. He had a few errors in there, but the fact that he looked capable of finding the magic again, I think, is the thing that he will take from this weekend.
And when you think through the other good performances he's put in at Ferrari, there's not been a huge amount of them, but you'd say China this year, and he fended off Charles in that really long tussle. Great. Happy Lewis. It was good. You think sometimes, Melbourne was okay last year. Obviously, the China sprint was great, but the rest of the Grand Prix, a great day for Lewis was to be close with Charles, basically. He's obliterated him this weekend. Charles was absolutely fed up. He was saying it was the worst weekend ever yesterday and today. Didn't want to hear from his engineer on the radio until the end, which speaks volumes of the pressure that Lewis put on him.
But we're back into the sort of what's your favourite track territory, because Charles has actually never been particularly great here, whereas Lewis has been great. This was his 11th podium here in Montreal. I want to ask you guys about simulators. There have been 2 races this year prior to which Lewis has not been in the Ferrari simulator. One was China, the other one was here. He said in the press conference after the race that he will not be going in the simulator as part of his race prep again this year. If you're the guy in charge of the sim in Maranello, you're probably feeling a bit shortchanged. I mean, JP, we'll start with you. How useful are simulators? If you're old school like Lewis, do you need them?
I would argue no. is the answer. He's got so much muscle memory of how to drive around circuits. He understands what he wants from the car. I think there's a new age of young driver that lives on the simulator and they do a lot. But the correlation is really difficult. We've got new regs, new cars, different ways of driving, different ways of deploying energy around the lap, which is changing lap on lap, day on day. So unless the simulator is perfectly correlated to what you're going to get on the track, it's of negligible benefit anyway, because you can't then plug and play on a Friday. You saw how dirty the track was on a Friday. It's evolving in all sorts of different ways. You've got wind direction that changes. So a driver like Lewis has been around nearly 20 years. If he doesn't feel like there's value in going on the sim, then there's probably the value would be more on Ferrari's side to get his feedback, to improve, maybe set up things. I'm sure the sim is working enough to understand different setup options, development options, absolutely. Correlation to improve the simulator even further. That's where the benefit would be. It would be more for Ferrari than it would be for Lewis. They've got development drivers who do a lot of that work. That's the whole point of having a development driver on the simulator. Charles is still using the simulator, so he's not on the same page. I kind of think each to their own. Schumi never liked to sim, did he? When he left Ferrari, came back to Mercedes, the world had changed a little bit, and it was all right, hop on the sim, and it literally made him sick. So he stopped using them.
Kimi Räikkönen ditto.
That or the great drivers find really good excuses not to have to go in the sim. No, I think it's really interesting, but they do still, especially with a sprint weekend format where you have to make so many changes over the weekend and you've got someone through there, in the sim overnight. If it's not accurate, they need to make it more accurate.
But the benefit of the sim is more for setup. It's bigger picture than helping your driver dial in. I think that's the key to this, is there's value in Ferrari having a simulator. I mean, I don't think the guy's going to hand in his resignation and think that's enough. Lewis has proved me wrong. I'm sure there's still a lot of value in them having what will be a really fine-tuned tool. You see Red Bull, McLaren, some really sophisticated teams use their sim overnight, sometimes Friday to Saturday, and try a load of different setups that some peddler's done through the night in the UK. It's a bleak job, but it could be worse, I guess. But if you're Lewis Hamilton, it's a day in a dark room pounding around somewhere that's not necessarily that relevant to what you've then got to do, or it's of limited relevance. I could see why he wants to focus on other things. And the thing is, when you turn up here, if he'd have been awful, scratching his head as to where he was going, you'd say, okay, that's a big call. But he's had his best weekend for a long time, so it's tough to argue.
I'm fascinated by these intra-team battles, right? We've discussed George and Kimi and how, one of them was really strong in Miami and we were coming here and George had to sort of, stamp his authority back on the team. And I feel we've got a similar situation developing at Ferrari. Lewis has come here and we're going next to Monaco, which is, Charles' track. He's won there before. He was second last year. And actually, I think Ferrari probably might go really well there. They're a bit of a power deficit on a track like this, but that won't matter so much in Monaco. How do you see the immediate future for Ferrari and Monaco?
It is a very good time for Charles Leclerc to be going to one of his great tracks. Obviously, his home track, but it's a track where he's always been superbly quick, even if he always hasn't had the results. So it's the calendar has fallen nicely for him there. Ferrari, on the evidence that we've seen in the earlier rounds this year, surely have a chance to win that Grand Prix because they are just superb through the slow stuff.
I've been hanging my hat on that all year. Ferrari will win a race. If we go by Monaco and they're not that competitive, then I'm going to have to row back on that one.
On the upside, I will do whoever wins, if it's not Ferrari, the loudest I've done in commentary. Like, Palmer, row them off.
I feel like we didn't see how good the Merc was this weekend with its updates. So it might still, see everyone off in Monaco, right?
Well, they still were good enough to top the sessions, weren't they? Might not have got the extremity of their performance out, and they'll be in the mix. I've got to say, on the evidence of his previous career, George has never had a brilliant run of it in Monaco. So it's not ideal from a George Russell point of view. But for Ferrari's inter-team battle, absolutely perfect for Charles Leclerc. Literally on his home streets. Even last year, he wasn't far off taking pole position, was he? So absolutely perfect for him to go there. And if Lewis can beat him there, then we've got the start of a different narrative.
What about Red Bull? Max Verstappen's first podium of the season, but it was the lowest step after Lewis passed him round the outside. He seemed pretty upbeat, I thought, after the race, Max. I think he wasn't happy with the car all weekend, so to come away with their first podium of the season was a decent result. We talk about body language of cars. What did you think of the Red Bull this weekend?
Yeah, it was obviously a bit of a handful. They started, I think, with a really stiff setup, and he was just bouncing off the curbs, trying to get that balance between getting a decent aero platform and getting ride quality is always difficult around this circuit, and I think they were too far in the trying to chase aero and missing compliance in the car. So they managed to improve that a little bit for qualifying. The car was more competitive, but still not quite where he wants it to be. But the race was just a very decent Max race, wasn't it? When I was on the grid, it was sort of drizzling, it was blooming cold. Everyone's talking about a race of survival, and I was thinking, okay, if you're Max, you're starting, 6th place? It'll probably be on the podium here. Of course, he's helped by 2 cars starting on Inters in front of him, but he's still worked his way up to 2nd place. They still did the job. Max was pretty clean, and it's not a surprise that in a bit of a chaos race, he ends up just putting it together and getting a podium.
Hadjar. He spent more time in pit lane than most. JP, just back to you on a driving standards thing. When he had Charles Leclerc behind him coming into that final chicane, he moved twice. You think the 10-second penalty was fair?
I think it was harsh, actually. I understand the stewards being a little bit twitchy, especially with the new regs. You've got sometimes big closing speeds. We obviously had the big moment in Japan with Behrman and Colapinto. But I was watching it when we were watching it live, weren't we? And then I saw it coming, and Charles was still keeping his foot in, moving to the inside. And then watched the replay, and I still thought Charles got quite a lot of time. I don't think Hadjar was moving super aggressively or super late, which is what the Colapinto moment was a little bit more in Japan, with a way bigger closing speed. So I do feel like it was actually a little bit harsh. Then Charles backs off. There's a little bit more of a hover. In the past, you'd seen these moments be dealt with a warning flag, I think, rather than a 10-second penalty, was my initial opinion.
It was a very extreme chop. I wonder if we're slightly misunderstanding their decision, because he then goes back to the racing line and then he defends again into the chicane. So I wonder if it's not entirely for the chop at high speed, which was hairy, but he then goes back to the racing line on the left-hand side, if you're picturing it on the onboard, and then he goes back to defend again. So I think it's a little bit, because it was so quick, they've gone, all right, if there was no drama there, if there was no brinkmanship at 200 miles an hour, we wouldn't say it. But it felt like they penalised the first chop and then gave the explanation of a second move.
Yeah, I didn't. That's the explanation, was moving twice, wasn't it? Or moving more than one change of direction. But that didn't feel like there was the bad thing that he did. The bit that was more in question that Charles was not happy about wasn't that. It was the move to the inside.
He was late, JP. He only moved to the right when Charles pulled out.
I think he was already on the way. That's my feeling.
Forgetting the
right.
regulations, right? Just what is the unwritten rule between racing drivers?
Well, you don't want to have late reactive moves. So once a driver's committed to a line, it's difficult to back out when it's too close with too big a closing speed. And the example for that is clearly Behrman Colapinto. He's coming too quick. Colapinto just jinks to the left, and Ollie's committed. Again, for me, I understand the safety aspects of it. I just think I don't think Charles was super committed to the inside as Isaac was starting to move across. For me, the closing speed wasn't as massive. It didn't feel like a really big closing speed like we've seen at other times. I think he telegraphed what he was doing quite early when Charles still had car lengths plus to him, but Charles kept going for the inside, which then was shutting. I understand what you're saying. I just didn't personally, as a driver, think it was extreme at all from Isaac. I think we've seen that sort of thing get away with a few times.
And after a difficult weekend for Isaac Hadjar in Miami, do you think he gave a better account of himself here?
Yeah, if we take every lap that he ran this weekend, he said he was getting destroyed through the corners up against Max in Miami. He clearly wasn't here, and that's his best result for Red Bull. So not perfect with a couple of penalties, but a step forward for him.
Right, the last team we're going to deal with in our pod is one that didn't score any points. They are the reigning world champions. And were we all thinking the same thing when we saw Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri on intermediate tyres?
You tell me what you were thinking, and then I'll come up with an Ofcom approved way.
I was thinking, are we in Qatar? I mean, they weren't the only team on Inters.
Yeah.
So obviously the radar was giving different options, but I always believe in situational awareness. Deal with what's happening in front of you, not what your laptop's saying the whole time. And it was clearly a slick tyre start.
I mean, 7 cars went for Inters, so it wasn't just McLaren. I don't think they were going off the radar. I think they were going off what was on the ground. But I have to say, in your Qatar comments, when you look around and you think of the big teams, only McLaren have gone for Inters, and you think track record for McLaren right now, doing something different to everyone else. It's not legendary, is it? I thought this is a bold call. It's either going to be a hero one or it's a 0-1, and the last time was Qatar and it was a 0-1. And as soon as they went for the formation lap, you knew that the softs were just, you could even just see the Mercedes leaning on it, and you're like, oh, if you can weave like that on a straight, you're doing okay.
So I was out there at green light, just beyond green light, doing the practice starts. And so I've been out there at past. And I've gone to the commentary box and I've seen there's no obvious rain. And then we've heard, it's wet at turn 10. We've heard the radio chatter on the reconnaissance laps. It's wet at turn 10. And so we're waiting for this great reveal on the formation lap because we see the same pictures that everyone else does at home. It cuts to the hairpin. And I was genuinely like, what on earth is going on? Have they all talked themselves into... You know, sometimes Alex Brundle has this wonderful turn of phrase where he talks about psychological rain. I felt like they all talked themselves into Inters because the temperatures were low. It's fine if you're the other 5 and you're not in the points. On row 2, that's one of the most bizarre calls I've seen since I've watched Formula
And to
1.
put both of them on Inters, right? Why not roll the dice and have one on one and one on the other?
And then he takes the lead.
Yeah.
Could he have... I don't think in his entire life he would have been more grumpy to find himself in the lead of a race. He's in the lead. He's jumped the Mercs. He's on the wrong tyre. It's a matter of time.
On a dry track on
It's
Inters.
obviously dry. It's freezing out there, but one of the strangest things I've seen in a while.
So there's been so much scaremongering the last 24 hours. You speak to anyone in the paddock and they're talking about the race being a race of attrition. If you keep it on the road, you're doing well today. Quotes from Pierre Gasly that if it rains, it's going to be a demolition derby and all of this. And everyone was saying, I was on the grid speaking to various people and they were like, look, we just need to survive this one. And I spoke to Ollie Behrman as he was walking off the back of the grid. I said, how's the grip? And he's like, yeah, there's not a lot of it. It's going to be really tricky. And I think everyone was just so terrified of tyre temp. And clearly you could hear Oscar's team radio and Tom Stallard coming back and saying, look, even when Oscar wanted to pit, and look, we can all see at this point it's dry, but is the tyre temp going to be an issue? And I think it was all just tyre temp related rather than just moisture related. But basically, it was fine.
If they'd started on the right tyre, do you think they could have challenged the Mercedes?
Well, on the evidence of Saturday, they had a fair shout, didn't they? And the Mercedes scrapping would have had an entirely different context if you had Lando right there, because Lando looked capable of picking up the pieces, because he did in the sprint. So if you constantly have them scrapping lap after lap, yeah, Lando looked most likely to pick up the pieces, but they deleted their race before it even began. And that is I think the field will learn from that one. I don't think the next time we get a gamble race, we'll see it with a dry track and intermediate tyres. It's so strange what happened.
I was reminded of the Malaysian Grand Prix, and I think it was 2007 when Ferrari pitted Kimi Räikkönen on a bone dry track, literally bone dry track, because the radar said, oh, there's going to be a downpour in 5 minutes. It never came. And so you just had Kimi going around on this Inter, waiting for the rain, and eventually had to pit and put a slick on again.
Alpine did that a couple of years ago, didn't they? I think they put Ocon at the time on totally the wrong tyre in Zandvoort, and Ocon was so angry that it led to their double podium. And just stay out there. When it rains, just stay out there. Wait for the inevitable safety car. So the only upside for McLaren is They can learn from this, but I don't think you'll ever see anyone on the second row gamble on non-existent rain for a long time.
What I would say as well is the drivers surely have to bear some responsibility here. We're pinning it all on the team, but the drivers are the ones that have driven the track. So all the drivers are thinking, bloomin' heck, this is going to be a difficult race on the way around to the grid. The drizzle, the conditions, they're all just feeling it, tiptoeing around, bit of moisture. Oscar and Lando must have a decision here to make. They're the ones reporting it back. So they'll have come back and just said, I don't know if we can survive this. They must have done to speak to the race engineers. There's no way that McLaren can overrule drivers that think it should be slick with inters. So maybe one driver thought more strongly of it and the other ones thought, if he's doing it, then I'll do it. And that's why they've jumped in the same boat. Audi did the same. Sainz, I was interested in him going for inters as well further back. Normally a driver that I would back to be on the right side of these sort of calls. So when I saw him on it, as well as the Audi guys, you got Nico Hülkenberg there with loads of experience. They weren't alone. It's just they were alone in the top bunch that did it. If you're Sainz in a Williams, you're Hülkenberg in an Audi, you know you're going to be nowhere on the end of lap one anyway. You've got more to play by going a bit rogue, whereas McLaren had less, and surely the drivers have got to burden a little bit of that.
It was a difficult weekend for McLaren as a whole, not just the race. I mean, they brought, the second part of their upgrade and they had to take the front wing off. There's a bit to review back in Woking, isn't there?
They sometimes do that. If that front wing doesn't return for a while, that would be a massive outlier from what we've seen from McLaren in the last couple of years, where every time they've brought something, bolted it to the car, it's made the car quicker. So there is a potentially bigger story, but we'll have to wait a couple of weeks to see whether that's the case. Obviously, Monaco's an outlier next, so one after that, we'll find out.
Well, it was a hell of a race. There was so much going on throughout. I just want you guys, before we come to our driver of the day, just reflect on a couple of standout performances. Whatever they're feeding Franco Colapinto at Alpine, keep feeding him the same thing. Best ever result in Formula One. Actually, a double points finish for Alpine as well. I mean, what has happened to Franco? I'm being serious. Something happened in Miami, and he hasn't looked back.
I don't think he quite knows. I spoke to him after the race. He came on our show and he said that the month off between Japan and Miami was great, just to have a bit of a reset. He said he was driving okay at the start of the year, but clearly was chasing it compared to Pierre, who was completely hooked up. They bought some parts to the car in Miami and he just seems to be feeling the grip, just understanding it, happy to lean on the car, making fewer mistakes, finding more pace. And sometimes just a bit of time off and you come back with a fresh mindset. It does work. The car changed a little bit and he is doing a tremendous job.
He showed with Williams that if it's in his wheelhouse, he can extract good results. But it's the motivation and keeping your seat in Formula One. He's the driver hovering over the exit with a team boss who is famously impatient if you're not performing. If he didn't have these results, he would be in trouble. Back-to-back personal best in Formula One is superb, and it gives him a foundation for the rest of the year.
He's such an emotional driver. And
Yeah.
I wonder, fun enough, JP and I have talked about this before, but going back to Buenos Aires and doing that show car run before Miami, 600,000 people turned out to watch him. It can turn just like that.
600,000 people?
Yeah, in Buenos Aires for a show car run.
I wouldn't want to be in the back row. It's unbelievable.
When you saw the pictures of that and they'd built grandstands for a show run, you know it's special. So it doesn't hurt, does it? It doesn't hurt to have your name chanted and to feel the love of a sporting nation that they just get behind everyone. I remember when he was scoring points at Williams and he was in 10th place and I was like, what's he going to be like if he gets major points? He's looking capable of scoring major points.
And sometimes just literally taking your mind away. So having that month off, you don't think about Formula One the whole time. You get to just reset, just chill out, and you go and get praised by 600,000 people. But you do rock in, you get a different perspective. You're not entrenched in, this is all tough, Pierre's the guy. You come in, you think, hang on, no, I'm shoulders back. I can do this. It is great to have a reset sometimes.
Look, final one before we all head out. Liam Lawson, P7. Great result for him in the Racing Bull. And actually, Arvid Lindblad mentioned in dispatches for him because he didn't get to race on Sunday, but had been really impressive all weekend, didn't he?
Superb to rock up to Montreal, which is a unusual track, difficult conditions. We've seen some serious competitors in Formula One not get locked in this weekend. He was superb from the off, scored a point in the sprint, and was unlucky with the way that was handled at the start of the race. That he wasn't pushed back into the middle of the pit lane and a chance to fire it up. So didn't work out for him, but good on Racing Bulls. They delivered. And Liam Lawson's looking an assured performer after a stop-start Formula One career. He's looking like a driver who's got a bit of experience now.
Bit of consistency there from Liam. Well, guys, it's been wonderful to chat it through. A great weekend. I mean, best Grand Prix of the year so far.
Yeah, absolutely superb. 30 laps, best 30 laps of a team battle for the lead that we've seen since Austria last year with the McLarens.
Okay, Jacques, who's your driver of the day?
Franco Colapinto for back-to-back personal bests.
What?
Yeah.
We didn't see him all day.
Yeah. He was at risk of getting dropped if he didn't perform in the first 5 races. He has performed, and he's booked the rest of the season, if not longer, in Formula One. And when you're at risk of the trapdoor, that is not a given. The others, we had the McLarens deleting themselves from the battle. George didn't get a chance to take it to the end. Kimi acknowledged that at the end. So the driver who most unexpected result, I'll go for Franco.
Is Lewis for me. I'm not discrediting Franco, great drive, but driving that Ferrari back up to second place, overtaking Max, having the hunger to go and chase him down in the late stages as well, and not settle into the rhythm of a third place, which would have been quite easy. It was just great to see him back to his best. Had to be Lewis for me.
I'm with you on Lewis, but it's boring if we all say the same thing. So I'm going to throw in Carlos Sainz. I think Williams are having a very tough time at the moment. He started 15th on the wrong tyre and somehow pulled it back to a P9. And when they start slimming down that Williams, I think there's probably some underlying performance there. So I'm quite excited about what Williams can do in the second half of the year. And Carlos he's kind of Mr. Consistent. He, points, of course, in Miami as well. He just is. He's pulling the rabbit out of the hat for Williams at the moment.
He's the one making it work in this regulation set, I think is a fair sentence. And, yeah, not a given that they score points.
You knew on the grid, again, a little bit like you knew Max would be a podium threat. You think drizzle, this sort of day, Carlos will end up somewhere, which is why I was surprised he was on Inters, but he still ended up somewhere. He's just capable of having the mindset to make it work.
All right, well, guys, thank you both very much for coming on the pod. Great to chat as ever. See you next time in Monaco.
Cannot wait.
It's going to be good, isn't it? We love Monaco.
Yep, superb, and we could get our first non-Mercedes Grand Prix winner of the year, according to Jolyon Palmer.
Caveat it with that.
All right, guys, thanks so much. And for more reaction and analysis from Montreal, please go to f1.com, the official F1 app, and at F1 on social media. And do check out F1's other official podcasts this week as well. My guest on F1 Beyond the Grid is Audi boss Mattia Binotto. That's out on Wednesday on the Beyond the Grid feed, and you can watch our chat on the F1 YouTube channel. And Juan Pablo Montoya is on the latest F1 Explains podcast, talking about the route to Formula One. That's just below this show on the F1 Nation feed. Thanks very much for listening, and we will, of course, be back next Monday to preview the Monaco Grand Prix. F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.